Okay, so in this video I'm going to go over the building performance database so you can evaluate the energy use intensity of buildings in any sector. Okay, so what you want to do is you can just Google building performance database. The web address is up here, bpd.lbl, which is Lawrence Berkeley Lab.gov. So this is coming from the federal government. So it's openly available to all. You come to this page, you need to create an account if you don't already have one. It's free, there's no commitment, there's no cost. So you can create an account. It should happen pretty quickly. Then once you create an account and you log in, you should see something like this. Now I don't know what it's going to default. I've been messing around with this, so you might see something different when you log in. But going to give you a quick anatomy of what's here. The most prominent thing you should see here is this histogram. Okay, so there's a big histogram here on the left, at the top left. And so a histogram is a distribution. And so these are columns representing the buildings in a data set. And up here on the top right, you can see the size of your data set. So what the building performance database does is it's a database of buildings, as the name implies, and it basically people enter in information about buildings across the United States. They enter in characteristics like the size and the age and the climate zone and the use and so forth, and it slowly builds up this database. And what you can do is you can search for any type of building using this selection menus on the right hand side over here. So the type of building that it is, let me make that smaller. You can look at the type of building, you can look at the age, you can look at the climate zone, and so forth. So there's basically any number of characteristics here. And so once you start selecting those characteristics, it's going to whittle down this data set to only those buildings in this whole database that match those characteristics. So, and you can turn different characteristics on and off, and you can sort of mess around and find sort of the sweet spot where you have a data set of buildings that are similar to your building. They don't need to be exactly the same, because if you make it too specific, your data set is going to be really small. Okay, but as you update the characteristics, what this histogram will update as well. So right now I have a 1,500 building data set that's represented over here, and it's basically all the commercial buildings that's in this database. And so this chart is showing you on the x-axis. Okay, this is you may be able to see that it's source EUI. So this is a little bit different than, well, there's two different ways to look at EUI, really. There's two primary ways anyway. There's source EUI and site EUI. Now site EUI is the energy use intensity that the building uses on site. So this is the kind of thing that if you have utility bills, you can calculate the site EUI, because that is the energy that's being used at the building. So electricity and gas and oil, any energy that's used in the building, you convert it to BTUs divided by the square footage, and then you convert it to actually thousands of BTUs, or kBTU, and then you get a kBTU per square foot per year, and that is your site EUI. So we can check the site EUI box, and that's going to show us what a utility analysis would show. Okay, the source EUI tells you it considers the energy used at the source, the original source of the energy. So the upstream energy use. So a good example of this is electricity. If I use electricity in my building, the actual energy footprint from that is generally going to be greater than what I see on my bill, because the power plants, most power plants that generate electricity are very inefficient. And so if you look, for example, at a coal-fired power plant that average around 35% efficiency, the source energy for the electricity that I use in my building, if it was generated by a coal-fired power plant, it's going to be about 3 times what I use on site, because you lose about 75% between 60 and 70% of the energy in the coal compared to the energy that you get in electricity. So that's what source EUI. So source EUI, some people like source EUI because it gives you a truer accounting of your energy impact, whereas site EUI is something that we can more easily assess because we know through utility bills how much they use on site. Okay, so this is site EUI, and these bars give you the distribution of this data set. So we have here between 50 to 60 EUI, there's 55 buildings in this, right? If you jump up here, there's 50 buildings between 110 and 120, right? So you can look at the distribution across the board. This circle here, as you may have guessed, it's not the average, it's not the mean, it's the median. Okay, so the median, the middle of this distribution. So the median building in this data set has an EUI of 95. Okay, so that's really the features that you'll use on this database. And so the really nice thing about this is you can change these characteristics. So there's drop-down menus here. So right now I'm in commercial. See, I have this commercial building. So if I want to do commercial and residential all in one data set, I can just click the residential and mixed use button here. And in a second, when it updates, you'll see that the data set is going to increase because originally I only had commercial buildings. Now I have commercial and residential. So the data set went up. You see my distribution changed. So as you check and uncheck these buttons, your data set will automatically update and your histogram will update accordingly. So you can actually dig into individual sort of subcategories here. So we have commercial, and what we can actually do is commercial. There's a lot of sectors in the commercial sector, right? So there's agriculture, there's convenience store, there's data centers, and so forth, right? So you can, normally what happens is when you open this up, all of these are going to be selected. So right now this is showing all commercial buildings, and what I normally do is I'll just deselect all of them, and let's say I'm evaluating a college or a university, right? So I deselect all, and then I go down here to the education. Now I don't want to just select education. I want to go down to the subcategory and select my college and university. Okay. So when I do that, again, the histogram updates. It actually shows down here I have 983 buildings in my data set. Actually, that's not true. I have I still have 1,500 in my data set. So there's actually 1,585 in the data set, and there's actually 983 in the histogram. And the reason that is that there's 1,500 buildings that match this characteristic, but about 500 of them don't have a site EUI. So this shows you how many are in the histogram. Okay. So you can mess around and you can click buttons on and off and see how it impacts your histogram and your data set. The basic idea is you want it as specific as you can possibly get it without having too small of a data set. So if you get under like 100 buildings and your distribution doesn't have this kind of a bell curve type shape to it, then you've probably you've gone too specific for it. Okay, so you want it to be really close to your building, but if you only have like 10 or 50 buildings in your data set, it's probably not going to show you a very good sort of normal and statistically significant distribution. The two things you really want to do, if nothing else, is you want to make sure that you pick the right climate zone, okay, and the right building classification. So whether it's a commercial or a convenience store or a hospital or whatever. Those are the two primary ones you want to do. And if you can dig down to the size and to the type of heating and cooling systems and so forth, you can do that. Okay, so that's an overview of this. There are some more features on here. Feel free to explore, but that's the main thing that you'll use them for. And this is EUI. A chart like this is very commonly provided when you assess, do an energy audit for a building.